What's up, everybody? What it do? It's DC Black's back again. I'm about to take you back to the '60s. What I'm doing right now, I got a little series that I've been working on about, for lack of a better term, just notorious and remarkable escapes. I seen that a true crime series that I watched did a special on escapes, and I like how they did it. And I had some stuff that I was writing before pertaining to some DC Black stuff that was about escapes. But there's a guy named Billie Austin Bryant out of Washington, D.C. His story is it ranks up there amongst some of the top escapes. So I got this thing that I'm doing is going to be about escapes from DC jail to Lorton and the federal system, all type of interesting and intricate escapes. So let's get into the story right here. Like I said, this is about Billie Austin Bryant. So in the 1960s, Washington, D.C. was a city simmering in tension amidst the backdrop of civil rights struggles and a rise in crime. A name would soon echo through the streets, becoming synonymous with one of the most intense manhunts in American history, Billie Austin Bryant. Billie Austin Bryant was not an unfamiliar figure to the authorities. By April of 1968, he had already been sentenced to a staggering 18 to 54 years in federal custody for his involvement in a series of bank robberies that had terrorized the nation's capital. The jury in his trial had seen him as a dangerous man, and Bryant's reputation as a criminal was well cemented in DC history. But for Bryant, prison walls were merely a temporary obstacle. On August 23, 1968, while working in an auto shop at the Lorton Reformatory in Virginia, Bryant saw his chance. In a daring and calculated move, he crashed the automobile through a chain-link fence, disappearing into the countryside. The escape was swift, brazen, and successful. Bryant was now a fugitive, and the FBI was hot on his trail. Months passed as Bryant evaded capture. Then, on January 8, 1969, a daring robbery at the Citizens Bank and Trust Company of Maryland left two tellers shaken, their minds racing with a familiar face, Bryant. The FBI, now more desperate than ever to apprehend him, began to close in. 3 FBI agents were dispatched to Southeast Washington, D.C., to Bryant's wife's apartment, where they hoped to find leads on his whereabouts. As they climbed the stairs, fate intertwined their lives with tragedy. They unknowingly passed Bryant's wife, descending as they ascended, and arrived at her apartment door. When the door creaked open, it was not his wife who greeted them, but Bryant himself, standing behind the door with a deadly resolve. Without warning, Bryant unleashed a hail of gunfire, striking 2 agents at point-blank range. The 3rd agent, narrowly escaping death, managed to return fire. However, Bryant vanished into the night. Washington, D.C. erupted into chaos as the news spread. The FBI, the Metropolitan Police, and countless other agencies launched one of the largest manhunts in the city's history. Helicopters were overhead, roadblocks were set up, and the officers combed the streets with relentless determination. The city was under siege, not by an invading force, but by the fear of an elusive and dangerous escapee from Lorton. As the hours ticked away, the tension reached its peak. At approximately 6:50 p.m. on the same day, a sharp-eared citizen in a building heard suspicious noises in the attic. The FBI's relentless pursuit had spread fear and vigilance throughout the city and had residents calling in tips. The Metropolitan Police were quickly alerted and swarmed the building. When detectives from the robbery squad announced his presence, a voice responded from the darkness of the attic. It was Bryant, trapped and cornered, his escape route now a dead end. Surrendering to the authorities, Bryant was arrested and taken into custody. His time on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitive list had lasted a mere 2 hours, but it felt like an eternity to a city gripped by fear. Bryant's capture was a moment of relief for the city that had been held hostage by that violence, but it also was the beginning of the end for a man who had defied the law for so long. In the months that followed, Bryant stood trial for his crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. The bullets that had killed Agent Woodwright and Palomacino were tracked back to the revolver that Bryant had when he fired at the police. And testimony from the surviving agent proved so. It would seal Bryant's fate. On November 3rd, 1969, nearly a year after he had taken the lives of 2 FBI agents, Bryant stood before Judge Gerhard Gassel. The courtroom was heavy with the weight of justice as Judge Gassel sentenced Bryant to 2 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. The judge's words echoed within finality. Bryant would die in jail, but at the time that God so appoints. Bryant was immediately transferred to the federal penitentiary in Atlanta, Georgia, where the iron bars would close around him for the rest of his life. The story of Billie Austin Bryant is a stark reminder of the high stakes in the battle between law enforcement and those who defy it.